Why did Kenneth Branagh choose one of the lesser-known Agatha Christie novels for his third Hercule Poirot film? It's a mystery. Alright, before we get started, as always, a quick thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. If you enjoy the content I make and would like to offer your support for as little as $1 a month, you can get your name listed right here at the start of every video. Link to that is in the description below. And now, let's get into the actual review.
Tonight, we are all afraid. We cannot hide from our ghosts, whether they are real or not.
A Haunting in Venice is the third entry in the Kenneth Branagh directed Hercule Poirot films based on the Agatha Christie literary character. Adapted from the novel Halloween Party, this film follows the recently retired Poirot, who is asked to join a seance to see if a psychic is indeed the real deal, but things get complicated when one of the guests is murdered, and everyone is a suspect, including the already deceased. Out of the three recently released Poirot films, this one might actually be my favorite, and there's a number of reasons for that. Probably the most obvious one is that this was the first one where I didn't actually know what the solution to the mystery was prior to it being revealed, due to this one adapting one of Agatha Christie's lesser-known novels. I also thought the film's location was by far the most interesting out of the three. The gothic set design is really immersive and feels very massive in scale. And given this one seems intent on actually creating a spooky atmosphere, due to this one taking place on All Hallows' Eve, and the spiritualistic aspects that blur the line between fantasy and reality and life and death, it feels quite fitting that this story takes a gothic approach and embraces the inherent spookiness of the story and location. But at the same time, it never goes overboard with it. There are a few jump scares and a few scenes of things going knock in the dark, but the film never really does lose sight of the fact that this is a mystery. It is still a whodunit, and it doesn't try to trick you into thinking that it's not. And like I said, the mystery itself actually did take me by surprise, and this was even with one aspect of the mystery having been spoiled to me beforehand. The acting's mostly good. You got some good character actors doing just fine work. Branagh's always fun to watch as Poirot, Tina Fey does a fine job, Michelle Yeoh is really committed to her performance, and Jude Hill, shockingly enough, manages to hold his own against the adults, despite being only 11 or so. So yeah, it may be a really good, solid little horror mystery that will appeal more to the older crowd, which I am glad that movies aimed at an older audience are still making appearances at the cinema. But that doesn't mean that it's free from flaws. One of the things that almost always frustrates me with Kenneth Branagh's films is that sometimes he'll have weird shots and weird angles just for the sake of having weird shots and weird angles. And there is a treasure trove of that in here. You don't really get the sense that these Dutch angles or moments of handheld camera or the bizarre surplus of overhead shots were done for the sake of adding to the atmosphere. It's really just distracting more than anything else. And for some strange reason, he felt it was absolutely necessary for all these overhead shots to be photographed with a wide-angle lens. So parts of this film look like you're watching it from inside a glass bowl. Maybe you could excuse it for the seance scene, but for the scenes of characters just talking to each other, there's no need for it. I am perfectly on board with Kenneth Branagh being banned from using wide-angle lenses in his future films ever again. And some of the scenes aren't really staged all that great. Sometimes characters will pop in and out of a scene seemingly at random, or it feels like two characters that are talking to each other aren't even in the same room. And I should say that while the acting was all fine, the cast of suspects that we get this time around is not really that interesting, and they don't stand out that much. The most interesting character in this is a precocious little boy played by Jude Hall, but aside from him, none of the other characters have that many defining characteristics. I kept getting Jamie Dornan's and Kyle Allen's characters mixed up, and it took me forever to figure out how some of the characters were related to each other. So yeah, things like that do hold this thing back from being great. I keep waiting and hoping that these Perrault films will be genuinely great, but I'm not entirely convinced that Branagh's directing is what these films need. But that being said, they do fill a niche. Mystery whodunits aimed at the 40-plus crowd, and I am very glad that these films exist, and I am glad to report that this one is the best of the three so far. This is the kind of film that one could rent and put in on a lazy, cold autumn Sunday afternoon, with a cup of coffee by your side. It's cozy in spite of its obvious imperfections. A Haunting in Venice gets a solid half-full shot. And I guess that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you want to see my early thoughts of any film I watch or to read more of my reviews, make sure to check out my Letterboxd account. The link to that is in the description below. And make sure that you're subscribed so that you don't miss any upcoming reviews. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time.